The Netflix deal, the Spotify deal, at the time we were all like, wow, OK, maybe they are going to find their feet and it's going to be OK financially.
5 years down the line, they've done OK, they've made a lot of money, and Spare made him a lot of money. But is it going to be enough to sustain them? I doubt it. You know, he'll be a bald 50-year-old prince that, you know, a gentleman, you know, someone formerly known as Prince. That's what he will be. I think there's been so much damage created by Harry and shooting from the hip as he does.
Almost 3/4 of people do not want to see the King and Harry reconcile.
To trash his family, I think the polls says it all.
Yeah.
75, you're not going to come back from 75%.
And then he turned round and just said, Rhiannon, don't behave like that.
Welcome to Royal Exclusive, where this week there have been reports Harry and Meghan's Netflix deal could be over. Prince George gets welcome screen time for his 12th birthday, and we discuss your responses to some of the biggest and most important talking points in the royal family right now. A warm welcome to today's expert guests, who are author and journalist Robert Jobson and Sky News royal editor Rhiannon Mills. Right, as I just mentioned there are reports that Harry and Meghan's $100 million Netflix deal could be over. Now, it's important to point out the Sussexes and Netflix are staying tight-lipped on this. But if true, Robert, where does this leave Harry and Meghan now?
Well, the deal was always said about $100 million, wasn't it? And the talk of that figure sort of blew a lot of people's minds. But I think that was for productions and things that they're supposed to have done. Where does it leave them? Probably with a bit of a bowl out, looking for some handouts. Maybe that's why they were over with their staff. Were over here having discussions with the King. You know, I don't know. The reality is, in the past, they got support from the King and the late Queen, and that they said they were going to go and make their way. They've lost Spotify. They've lost Netflix. Yeah, they can't rely on the Spare money forever, can they?
Is this the end of a chapter, potentially, Rhiannon? Because we've seen 4 or 5 years of them appearing on all these documentaries and all these shows.
Look, it still amazes me that it was 5 years ago that they decided to step away. And the Netflix deal, the Spotify deal, at the time we were all like, wow, OK, maybe they are going to find their feet and it's going to be OK financially. Because there was always this big discussion about how do they move forward without it looking like they're trying to hang on to the royal title and saying, look, we're royals, but we're not royals, and that's why we need to kind of sign up to these deals. But I think for them now, look, remember Netflix, what they really wanted out of them was that documentary that we got in the first instance, where we got that fly-on-the-wall perspective. We were all wondering, are they really programme makers or not? So maybe it was inevitable that this deal was kind of going to come to an end. Meghan's With Love programme, don't know what you two thought of it. It wasn't particularly my cup of tea, but look, you look on Instagram and there's that whole kind of thing. People want to kind of have that aspirational lifestyle, branding stuff to tune into. So I think she's doing okay with that. I think she's trying to be authentically her. She's using her social media now. But yeah, it's just fascinating. They have this very expensive lifestyle. They have to pay for their security, pay for that big mansion. How do you kind of keep the money coming in?
You know, and also they had the opportunity because they got massive exposure with the documentary. It was, you know, Netflix got massive exposure too. They would have been very happy with that because it was used in their royal position, sort of monetarising their royal position. But there's only a limit that you can do with that, and I think that they haven't really come up with any other major ideas that are going to, make them any money. So I think they had a few ideas, nothing really materialised, but this is the problem. And I think it's exactly what the King warned Harry about, if you, make sure you've got a good plan for your exit. 5 years down the line, they've done OK, they've made a lot of money, and Spare made him a lot of money. But is it going to be enough to sustain them? I doubt it.
You look at Meghan, though, she's got her as ever brand, and look, every time I go on that website, everything seems to have sold out, whether it's a crepe mix or whether it's those dried flowers.
Maybe because they haven't made enough.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know exactly how much they're making of those products. But I understand that potentially for Harry now, there could be some kind of commercial project that he's working on. Don't know exactly what that is going to be. But again, it's making sure that it's not a bit naff and people don't look at it and go, oh, God, you're selling out. So I just think it's a really interesting but really precarious position for them to be in.
Well, it was precarious also for the royal family because, if they don't make any money from these things, there's always Spare 2 or Meghan 1, in terms of books.
You mentioned earlier that their main success was the 6-part Netflix documentary where they were talking about, the royal family, and talking about secrets, talking about their life. Whereas if we look at With Love Meghan, now there is a second series that's already been filmed, but if you look at With Love Meghan, it came apparently at 383rd in the global ranking, and the Polo docu-series 3,436th. The danger is, as we pointed out, that they could return, if they need to make any money in the future, return to a Spare 2, a Meghan 1, or another Netflix documentary.
The only thing is, you've got to look back to, what was it, about a week and a half ago now, where there were those peace talks. And look, I sort of hope, and I think many people hope, that maybe there is beginning to be those kind of open lines of communication at least between the aides, between kind of the King's Communications Secretary and certain new members of Harry's team that have come in. So you would hope, and certainly talking to some people behind the scenes, I know that there are now suggestions that, it probably wasn't wise that he did that, half an hour interview with the BBC?
So Harry, though, wasn't it?
It was so Harry.
Yeah.
I've done interviews with him in the past where he says, I'm not going to go there with personal stuff. You ask him a question and he can't help it. He immediately just opens up.
Yeah,
and now he's unleashed, isn't he?
Maybe that's what got the ball rolling. Maybe the King did, he would have watched it. I'm sure he would have seen something of it. And, he's a dad and he may have thought, well, actually, he may have a point. He's listened to his wife, Camilla, he's listening to his older son, both of which advise him against having anything to do with Harry. But you're still going to have a pang as a dad. If you're not very well and you have no idea about your own mortality, all you know is you're living with cancer, you're going to have certain things that you want to sort out. And one of those would be, your son. And he equally loves his son, Harry, as he does William. And in fact, he was closer to Harry before all this happened. So, I don't know, Harry is shot from the hip, but maybe it sort of landed on the target somewhere.
They do live this peculiar life, though, don't they? Like, most of us have the odd falling out within our families, but we don't have aides that we fall back on to go, well, you go and sort bits of it out. So I thought it was really interesting that finally there seems to be at least this open communication between the King's team and Harry's team, which simply hasn't been there from all the conversations I've had. It's not been there. And it's kind of, I think, probably trying to get rid of some of the really unnecessary negative stories. Like, I don't know, for example, Harry's out on a job on the same day that his dad's in Canada, and immediately we're all jumping on it going, oh, Harry's snubbed his dad. When Harry doesn't know the diary of his father. So I think some of it is quite practical, not necessarily how we're going to have the photo op where father and son are embracing. Do you know what I mean? I think sometimes it comes down to very practical stuff of how can we try and stop there being an own goal when it comes to negative
There needs to be a
stories.
bit of a campaign, an organised campaign, a bit like there was Operation Mrs. P. Beads. If they want to repair so that there was an acceptance again before they were at the Ritz together. I think there's been so much damage created by Harry and shooting from the hip as he does. And I think if they want to try to get a sense of closure over this, which is they do need it before there's any change of reign or anything like that. The last thing you want is a narrative going forward with King William not speaking to Harry and the whole thing becoming even bigger. So I think there does need to be some sort of closure on it. And they are starting to have those conversations, but I still think they're a long way to go. I can't believe people will be accepting of Harry ever really having any formal role again in this country. I think he's trashed not only the crown, his father, his family, but in doing so, you're sort of disrespecting the people who pay for and are represented by the monarchy.
Well, let's talk about this idea of reconciliation or potential reconciliation, and also the public view or how the general public feel about this? Because I have a theory, it's an unfounded theory, but potentially they're both happy that this idea of reconciliation has come out so they can then test what the public think, to see what the press think, to see what the general flavour, a flag-waving exercise, as we might call. So we've done a poll of Royal Exclusive viewers and Sun readers, and the results, I don't know if they're that surprising, but on the first question we asked, do you want the King and Prince Harry to reconcile? 73% said no. 18% said yes, 9% said maybe due to concessions. I mean, if you were just to take a straw poll of I read the comments on this show, and people are educated, they're plugged in, and they've got views on royal issues. They know what they're talking about. Almost 3/4 of people do not want to see the King and Harry reconcile. And
I think, look, this is always going to be the biggest issue for Harry and Meghan, is that an awful lot has been said. The whole family kind of went under the bus, really, in the documentaries and in Spare. And there are lots of things that they cannot erase in terms of what's been said. And that is very difficult. And Harry actually alluded to it, didn't he, in his recent interview?
He still wants an apology. He wants an apology.
Yeah,
Ridiculous.
but he did talk about how it's going to be difficult for his family to forgive him. And as you can see, members of the public are like, well, they shouldn't forgive him. They really shouldn't. But I do think now he's got new people in his team, Harry, and I think they are, and I wrote about it on the weekend, they are aiming, I think, for a softly kind of reset of how we feel about Harry, trying to remind us of, you know what, he was a good lad, we used to love him. Actually, people preferred him sometimes to his brother because he jumped 2 feet in first, he was brilliant with people. Seeing him in Angola again, I think they're trying to probably get him out more.
But wasn't that tired? Didn't you think that image, the Angola issue, retrading on Diana, he did it in 2019. It didn't have really the impact. Yeah, it made a couple of front pages. Didn't have anywhere near the impact it had in South Africa. You were there, I was there when he was getting very grumpy with you and whatever. But the reality was, you know, that was a big deal then when we had that.
Yeah.
Wasn't a big deal this time round. So he's not the same draw that he was. He must know that. Yeah. He must know that actually the idea when you've trashed your family, monetarised it. The point is Diana had a right go at, you know, through Andrew Morton's Diana, Her True Story. She went for it. But she didn't monetarise it for herself. He made a fortune out of it. And now, in any way, he's asking for forgiveness. Well, you know, I think that his father probably will in the long term. I think he probably will. I just don't see William and Camilla doing it.
But the poll is so interesting because the UK public seriously need winning over. Like, there needs to be some massive work on that. It's just amazing to see
Hence
those
he
numbers.
appoints a UK PR man.
Yep.
And he's trying to do it. I think it's too late. Too much has gone under the bridge, in my opinion. Too much water.
But you think about Camilla. You think about Camilla Parker Bowles.
Yeah, but what has she actually ever done? Has she ever spoke out against anybody? She's been actually
no, but
perfect
she was
the way she's
vilified.
behaved.
She was vilified, and yet
They never threw bread rolls at her, though. That actually was an actress. That isn't true, that story.
She was vilified, but Camilla, you know, I was talking about this earlier, she really handled it like a boss. She didn't speak out.
Yes.
She stayed by the King or the Prince of Wales at the time.
Exactly,
she never really put her foot wrong. She just, you know, played a
She
very...
took it on the chin and never said anything out of place and worked solidly for 15, 20 years. And eventually, even now, you got some people don't like her, but, you know, you've got to respect her.
But it took a while.
It did take a while.
That's my whole point, is it took a really long time for people to warm to her and
What about
appreciate...
Meghan, though? Will Meghan be able to come back?
But Harry doesn't have that time, really, does he?
He doesn't.
Harry can't follow the blueprint that was used for Camilla to win the public over. But I think you've hit the nail on the head when you were talking about the fact that it's fine to maybe win over, you know, win over the royal family in his desire for a reconciliation between father and son, but he also has to win over the public, and this is the main
75% say no way.
We have a second question that we put to our readers and viewers. Should the royals welcome Harry back into the fold? No, 68%. Yes, for Harry's own good, 13%. He needs to apologise, 19%. So it's, again, overwhelming no, the public say that...
And he needs to apologise as well.
He needs to apologise, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that says it all. I think too much water under the bridge. I think most people will be thinking, no, it's not going to happen. Yeah. It's not going to happen.
But he needs to win back the public as well as the royal family.
But how does he do that when you've been you know, that the Spare did more damage than Netflix. I mean, Spare probably really did wreck it.
It gets worse on this poll because we also asked who is the biggest problem for the royal family. And the way it was structured was Harry and Meghan, Meghan on her own, Prince Andrew on his own, or Harry on his own. Prince Harry only scored 10% on who is the biggest problem for the royal family. Prince Andrew was 13%. Meghan on her own was 37%, but Harry and Meghan combined were 39%. So is it maybe that Meghan is actually the problem rather than just Harry on his own?
In their perception, in the general public, probably is, but probably unfairly.
Because
I think she takes
a lot of the flack.
She takes all the flack. Anything that Harry would have driven, it seems to be blamed onto her because she's an American and she's an outsider. I think it's quite harsh on Meghan. I think actually the things that she has done, she's been pretty true to herself. She said, I can't do this, I'm going to live over there, going to do my sort of stuff that I've done before, TV shows, you know, it's the sort of thing she was doing before. She's pretty much doing what she said she was going to do.
I think the way that both of them handled the departure was not terribly classy, and I don't think people forgive them for that. I think with Meghan there is this, that we share the same language, don't we? But I think there is a culture clash between Brits and Americans. But I do think with Meghan now, she is authentically doing what she wants to show us, and kind of she's taken ownership of her brand through her own social media and stuff. From conversations I had with Harry in the past, he always had the potential to jump. He always had the potential to want to leave the royal family in a way.
I mean, do you remember we were in New Zealand and you did that interview and we did it?
Yes.
And he was all over the place because he was looking for a girl at the time and saying, I don't want to settle down and all these sort of things. He was terribly popular then. And, you know, we went all the way to New Zealand, well, Stewart Island and whatever. Yep. And we were in a pub quiz, which he cheated in and we won. And it was fun. You know, he was okay. And we got massive shows on that trip. I think he threw away a massive pearl here. You know, he had so many things that he could have given. And then I think that's probably why we always blame Meghan for practically everything. But the reality, because she couldn't cope with what was expected of her here. But to trash his family, I think the polls says it all. Yeah. 75. You're not going to come back from 75%.
But Harry has managed to separate himself off from Meghan in these efforts to reconcile.
Or the other way around.
But he's. We talk about professional separation, that they, you know, have clearly different professional paths and interests in what they're doing. But this isn't about Meghan coming over to speak to the royal family, or this is about Harry meeting the king. He's already paved the way because he said that it's too dangerous to bring Meghan, so that's not going to be an issue. The royal family don't have to sit there thinking, well, he's going to turn up at Balmoral this summer or turn up at, the Christmas concert in December with Meghan. He's going to smooth the issue, so it's just Harry that's looking to reconcile.
Yeah, he is, but really for the king, as a grandfather, he should be seeing his grandchildren. You know, there should have been, for those grandchildren, a moment when they met their grandfather, the king, and they could remember. I think it's terribly sad, and I think that it would, if Meghan can't come over, then he should bring his kids and they should have a meeting, you know, wherever they have that meeting, away from prying eyes. And it's just too sad. I think that really the king, I believe, is an empathetic man, a kind man, a warm person. Yes, he has his moments, but, you know, he will be feeling this. He's going through his chemotherapy, he's living with cancer, and I'm sure in his heart he would want to see, you know, his darling boy, as he used to call him.
I think all of it, when you strip away the amount of stories we've written about it or reports that I've recorded or whatever, it's just all sad. It's all just really sad that you've had this massive fracture within the family, and yeah, you can blame Harry for speaking out and being too hot-headed about it. But those who support the Sussexes would say, look, it just shows the institution up as being outdated and old-fashioned and unable to accommodate two people who wanted to do things a little bit differently. But it's how do they have those moments where they can reconcile when people are kind of looking at flight manifests to see when Harry's heading over and all that. It's that added complication that all of us wouldn't have if we were having a row with our
But
family.
apart from doing the book, if you actually I read it again the other day, slow read after all the madness when it first comes out. His actual view of his father in it is actually fairly sympathetic.
Yep.
And it's only the others who get it, Camilla particularly, Kate a little bit, William definitely. And there are some nice moments, touching moments in there about his father.
But they got lost, didn't they?
They did get lost because of the maelstrom of media that was around at that time, and we were all looking for the major headline. But you've got to remember, not only did Diana, his mother, do the Diana Her True Story, his father did the Dimbleby book, in which he attacked his own parents too.
Yes.
And so there's a bit of hypocrisy going on here as well, because Dimbleby wrote the book. It was semi-authorised, but it was pretty strong against Prince Philip and against the Queen, basically saying that they were really not emotionally engaged. Wow, that was huge. And I remember Prince Philip was utterly furious for a long time. So, what has he done against his father that his father didn't do against his own parents?
I think the difference there is that Harry disappeared. He went off and stopped being a working royal when, I think the family could have done with a supportive Prince Harry and Meghan within the royal family. I think that was one of his main problems, apart from just trashing the royals, the fact that he just upped sticks and said,
he
I
threw
want
the
nothing
grenade
to do.
and went, I'm off, as well as then the reasons I'm off are X, Y, Z, and I'm not going to hold back.
Which brings me on to nicely onto the fourth question that we asked our viewers, which I think is the nuclear option, I describe as, and I think I want to get your thoughts on this. So we asked, ultimately, should the King remove the Sussex's titles from Harry and Meghan? And 91% said absolutely.
I agree with
Well,
it.
that's...
You agree with that,
I
Rob?
agree with it, yeah.
Do you?
I think because they've disobeyed the HRH and they've flaunted that. They're now talking about, I'm Meghan Sussex. Well, you're slightly, taking the mickey out of the royal family. You're not. You want it out. You wanted to be American citizens, where titles don't matter. What is the point of having their children as prince and princess if they're not in any role? They're not Habsburgs from the previous century. It seems ridiculous to me. And also, if you want to be, American citizens and be branded, they don't need the Duke and Duchess of Sussex in front of their name. Harry and Meghan, they know, we know who you're talking about. So no, I think if you're not involved and you're not a working royal and you're not really part of it, then remove the titles. I also think there's precedent amongst the Scandinavian royals where that was all changed around and they got rid of princes and princesses, apart from the first section, and that probably wouldn't be a bad way of going forward, really, for the royal family. With George, Charlotte, and Louis, to not keep extending this prince and princess thing, and just have them as either their names or a lord or lady, whatever they want to do, but not continue with the having an extended royal family, prince and princesses all the way down the line. Yeah, I'd remove the title. They pretty much damned themselves about that. They didn't want to be part of the royal family. They trashed the institution, so why do they need the titles?
Rhiannon, are you part of the 91% that Rob clearly is?
No, I think we've had enough. Look, it'd be another story for us to write about, but I think enough has been done. And actually, the things that really mattered to Harry have already been taken away from him. So his military affiliations.
No, it's not him though, is it? It's
gone.
us. It's us. I'm thinking about the 91% saying, well, a bit of an, he's taken all his stuff. Yeah, he's lost a lot, and he has. But that was given to him to serve, not given him for 5 minutes. It was given him for life of service.
I still think if you cut Prince Harry in half, it would still say service and duty. I genuinely do. And you look at what he does through Invictus, and you see that very clearly. I think what they would argue is the way that they show those elements of service and duty are different now.
I
just think it's enough. I think enough. And actually,
that was given to them for a reason. It wasn't given to them. It was given to them in anticipation of service. People like the Duke of Kent, who are still turning out now, he was given that title, and he was done a lifetime of service. Mm-hmm. They did a lunchtime of service.
Well, very good point. I mean, the late Queen was, she felt very strongly about titles as well. It was something that, she felt was important that people respected their titles, used their titles correctly. And I do wonder you know, what if she was 30 years younger, what kind of view that she might have taken on it. But
legally, have they done anything yet where they have overstepped the mark in terms of the deals that they've signed?
It's not about the legal. 91% of the readers on
we
this
must
show,
listen to the public.
91% are pretty much saying, enough. You're disrespecting us, because that was given to you by the late Queen in anticipation of service, and you didn't finish the service.
Well, I think the Sussexes are trying to listen to the public. I think, as I say, when I alleged that it was a flag-waving exercise to make sure that everybody knows that the reconciliation is on the cards, I think we're talking about this new PR team.
Yeah.
We're talking about, you know, them coming over to London and Harry wanting to come back to the UK. It's important what the public think. It's important what we write, because it does change what they do and what tactics the Sussexes are wanting to do. So
I think the hard thing with Prince Harry is I get the impression that they do want him to do more public-facing engagements. One, I suspect, is the fear of, well, what's the response that he's going to get? Although, actually, outside of the Invictus Games service at St Paul's, he got a great reception from the crowd when he did a kind of impromptu walkabout. But also, the difficulty is they still don't want to seem to let us in. And as we all know, it's the dialogues that go on behind the scenes between communications teams, journalists, that really help to sort of fill the vacuum of information. If we don't know what they're actually doing, then how can we accurately report on it? And some might say, give them a kind of a fair showing, I suppose. Not necessarily say this is great what they're doing, but just be a bit more balanced about what we're doing.
I think the show's moving on though. You know, we're talking about when we were in New Zealand all those years ago.
Yep.
He was a big noise then. It was the vibe was all positive about him. The vibe isn't positive about him now. He's like, we're dealing with what, you know, they're not apart, but you know, we're dealing with an Andy and Fergie post separation. They're 40-year-olds. They're not young royals.
Well, and
they're different now. The vibe is different. The whole mood and shift will now go on to George, Charlotte and Louis. And they will become really, frankly, bit part players. Now, they won't like that. And that's probably what this is all about, making sure they've got a presence, a brand to monetize, because pretty soon they're going to be really so far removed from the main game that they're not going to be able to get as much money out of being royals.
I think Valentine Lowe wrote that in his book, didn't he? Or I seem to remember Val writing about saying that Harry did have fears that he might, you know, become irrelevant into his 50s. And, you know, they're making a huge noise at the moment.
Yeah.
But he undoubtedly will. You know, he'll be a bald 50-year-old prince that, you know, a gentleman, you know, someone formerly known as Prince. That's what he will be. I mean, and that will be not the same as they talk about, oh, he's got an appeal with the younger generation. Well, they'll be thinking, who is this guy? They won't even know who he is.
I think it's also trying to kind of make things a bit more positive. I've spoken to some journalists in America who were saying how we love a kind of boy or girl done good. And the fact that for Harry and Meghan, for a very long time, a lot of the stories have been negative and around, well, we felt badly treated by the royal family. And certainly with Meghan, look, with the twerking video and her really kind of owning her social media, I think you're seeing that kind of, right, I'm going to be more upbeat, I'm going to be positive. And we're sort of waiting for more of that, I think, from Harry.
But then, of course, they're already ahead of the game on this, the Sussexes, because they've done their branding for their two children. Mm-hmm. She's writing a diary entry every night to Archie and Lilibet. I wonder what that's for, the diary of Archie and Lilibet. I don't know, it's a nice book. But they know that those two will be, and they've got all their branding around that, they will be something that they will be able to monetize. And unfortunately about the Sussexes, I just call them H&M, because I don't believe they should have the title, is all about the money. And of course, the reason we want, there's a lot of this, and let's not be too cynical. Yes, he wants a reconciliation with his father. His father has a finite time on this earth. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of money to be distributed. And I'm sure that's a conversation that needs to be had.
We'll get on to Prince George in a minute because he's had a quite a big week actually, or a big birthday this week. Before we move on, I just on Harry, you touched on New Zealand and the fact that you and both of you have
cheated out of that quiz.
have followed Harry before he quit stepped down as a working royal for a long time. I just want to touch, because you know Harry quite well. I just want to touch on, was it Malawi? Now, can you? I remember the footage. It was before I was a working royal. Before I was a working royal.
I knew this show would get to him.
It happens to us all.
I remember the footage. It was before I started working as a journalist reporting on the royals. Can you just remind us what happened? Because I mean, it does show a good insight into the way that Harry deals with the media and also his personality under stress.
He got very grumpy.
With you?
But it's interesting what you were saying. New Zealand was classic Harry.
It was.
I did this interview with him. He said, I'd love to have kids right now. We had this really good rapport.
Yeah, that's true.
It wasn't a friendship, it was friendliness, but he was always really helpful. He was like, go and speak to those people over there. They've got a great story to tell. Anyway, fast forward to the South Africa trip, which was sort of seen as quite make or break for them because they'd had some negative headlines over the holidays. And actually, that trip was going really well. And we'd done Angola, which was kind of amazing pictures. We were flying around in these little planes with him. On the sidelines, he was doing that interview with Tom Bradby. They were kind of filming stuff for that, which, of course, ended up being their first kind of attempt at saying, we've had enough. Anyway, we were in Malawi, and I was a bit under the cosh because I had to do kind of a special to end off the week. So as he was about to walk past me, I thought, right, I'll do what I've done over the years. I'll just ask him a quick question. We've all done it, the dreaded doorstep. It was a terrible question. It was a rubbish question. I just sort of said, why is it so important for you to come here? Big journalism here. And he looked at me and said, well, just go and ask those people over there. And I probably inside thought, hang on a minute, I'm not going to leave this one. And I said, well, is that why it's so important for you to come here? And then he turned around and just said, Rhiannon, don't behave like that. And then got in his car and drove off. I felt like I'd looked like an idiot. He looked really patronising. Nobody came out of it looking good. Anyway, it all blew up with his team. They were livid. And then it was when we got back to Johannesburg, and it was in that evening that letter dropped, the 10-paragraph letter accusing the Royal Press Pack of everything under the sun and saying, look, we're going to sue the Mail on Sunday. So immediately I just realised I'd frankly kicked the bear, and I just didn't realise it at the time. But it
shouldn't go around doing your job. That's the trouble, isn't it?
It just felt really sad at the time because I had this good rapport with him. And that, in a way, is why I'm hoping that we will see more of him. We will see him doing what he has always done best. He is brilliant with children. He is brilliant with people.
I think we're living in the past. I think that the 91% and the 75% are right. I remember on that trip, we were on the plane coming across, and I just broke the story that he was quitting the army, which he probably never should have done.
Yeah.
And I really think he should have stayed in the army as long as possible. And he was really chippy with me because he spoke to him and he goes, I said, what are you going to do next then? You know, which is fair enough. Yeah. And he said, you'll probably find out before me. And I went, okay. I said, yeah. But then we had a reasonable discussion about, prosthetic legs for soldiers and what he was going to do. So he had a lot of plans, but I think that he's now turning into the new Prince Andrew. And I don't think, not in the respect of certain other allegations, but he's no longer the young, fun 25-year-old prince. He's going to be sort of the middle-aged, balding prince that no one can remember. We're going to be all looking at Charlotte. Charlotte's going to be at Wimbledon with what glasses she's wearing, what hat she's going to be wearing. George, what's he going to do to support? He's going to be turning up at the football. Louis, mad dancing. This is the future. And I think this is the problem that's going to face Meghan and Harry. Look,
I've got hopes for a reset. I've got hopes for a reconciliation. Wouldn't it be great for us to be writing something positive about father and son reconciling?
Yeah. I know. I'd like to see. No, I would like to see the father and son only because I believe the king deserves a bit of respect, and I don't think actually he's been shown enough respect in the last 3 years since he's been king by his son, I think he's been completely disrespected.
Yeah, I'd like to see a reconciliation, but at what cost? We need to not suddenly forget what's been happening in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But of course, people want to see people being happy. But let's just not forget. At what cost? Needs to be apologies. There needs to be a change in attitude. But
See, that's what you get from a working royal.
I didn't joke. Thanks, Rob. Let's talk about the future.
Yes.
A potential, or not just potential, but a future working royal, Prince George. He turned 12 this week. It's not a major milestone. We normally treat like every 5 years or every 10 years or 21 for something. But 12 feels big for George. He's growing up. He looks tall in that video, by the way. He's towering over his siblings. But it's been a big year for him. Where do you think Prince George is at the moment, Rhiannon?
I just think it's so interesting to look at how he's increasingly being manoeuvred into some of those big kind of public moments. VE Day, I think, was a massive day for him. And I need to talk to you because you were in the room, weren't you, for that big tea party?
Yeah.
There's this amazing photograph.
It's great stuff, that.
Yeah, lovely photograph of Prince George shaking hands with a veteran. And you just look at it and you just think, wow, this is future heir, but also future king in training. And while William and Kate obviously want to do it in a real softly way, it's inevitable what is coming down the tracks. And I just think at Wimbledon as well, he was there, part of the lineup.
Yeah.
And what I think is interesting about George is he sort of reminds me of his dad, really. He seems a bit more serious than Charlotte, certainly Louis. He seems to kind of be thinking about what he's doing.
He's aware of who he is.
Yeah, there is an awareness.
I think also, I think that what is interesting is 12 now. We just talked about 5 years since Harry and Meghan left, OK? 5 years' time, he'll be 17 years old,
Yeah,
It's going very, very quickly. We know that he's been getting a bit more independent. We also know that, I think that in the past, if you got to 12, the Queen laid it down that the heir couldn't, like William, couldn't fly with his brother, couldn't fly with the rest of the family. There's been a lot of rows about whether or not the family should be flying in the helicopter. We know he's growing up a bit more too. He's had, he's at school. He would stay over at school. He'd be doing a bit of boarding at school. So we know that he's growing up. He's making his own position stronger. He's got a bit more independence about him. And I think that shows you his parents respecting who he is. It's a big decision coming up what school he goes to next.
Yeah.
Will it be Marlborough College, where he could then link up again with Charlotte, if that's the case? Or will he go to Eton like his father? I think that's still to be decided. But I wouldn't be surprised if it was Eton because of the proximity, but equally I wouldn't be surprised if it was Marlborough College because of the influence on that his mum enjoyed that experience. So look, he's growing up rapidly, and I think that you can see things going through, and he's had a lot of experiences. He's been at the state funeral of the Queen Elizabeth. He's been at the coronation. He took an active part in the coronation of his grandfather. These are big experiences for a young lad to be really there at the front row, and he knows what's coming. But at the same time, what he has had with William and Catherine is a mum and dad that are protecting him and not having him have to overthink, which I think is fantastic.
But they are revealing more and more over time. William and Catherine Neal are taking him to Wimbledon.
When you were in that room with them for VE Day, what was it like? Like, did they feel like a kind of protective force around him, or did it feel like they were saying, no, you need to spend your own personal time chatting to these veterans? I think it's fascinating.
No, it was great. So I had the rota, so I was very fortunate to have my name pulled out to do this job, and I didn't know Prince George would be turning up. But it was a large room in Buckingham Palace, and we had
lots of people,
30 or 40 veterans, all sat down having lunch, and the entire royal family clan moved in, from King to Queen, William, Catherine, Edward, Sophie, Princess Anne, and everywhere you looked there was a royal. And then George was there. We weren't expecting George, and what I saw was both William and Catherine kind of giving him a little bit of independence, where they would bring him into a conversation, or that, you know, William would often have his arm around George, but they would get him to the front to speak to a veteran. And I think George liked it because he got to talk about war and guns and submarines and tanks.
Which guys were very young when they did all this stuff. So it's amazing you got that connection, isn't it?
Yeah, but I felt watching their parenting, I think, is really interesting because they understand the responsibility that George has to take on. And it struck me as an incredibly important job for George, almost like the first kind of major engagement. And it was a safe space because it was in Buckingham Palace, somewhere that he knows, and he was with all his family. And I say it wasn't just William and Catherine, there were lots of them. But I saw they were being very genuine, and they were just allowing George to talk to veterans and express his opinion. And I quite enjoyed it, although everywhere I turned, I once tried to sit in Camilla's chair. I didn't realise that she was about to sit there. I turned around and almost stood on Prince Edward's foot. So in the end, I just had to disappear, realising I had no spatial awareness or peripheral vision, and hide in the corner. But have any of you guys ever had to hide from a royal in your beat?
No, it just sounds it could be you, mate. To be honest.
No, it is me as well. It is the perils of our job because you have these run-throughs, don't you? Of like, right, this is where the royal's going to go, and you need to stand here, and you need to stand there. And then they go rogue, don't they? The royals go rogue. And there was one moment, and we actually were on this job together, weren't we? It was during COVID times. I think they kind of had a bit of a loosening up of lockdown. And we were in Battersea Park, and it was the then Duchess of Cambridge, so Kate, was wandering around these gardens. And I was completely in the wrong way, so I had to sort of retreat into a bush, like literally hide.
Have you ever been doing a piece to camera like doing it there?
Into a bush. And she did laugh, to be fair.
She did.
She thought it was hilarious. I felt like
Have you ever done one of those ones where you're doing your piece to camera and then like...
I've never had a Prince Philip on my shoulder.
The Prince Philip on the shoulder was the best. And it gets really... No, that was fantastic.
No, I've never had that. But that's the other peril of my job.
Piece to camera when they hear you.
Yeah, well, exactly. If you're saying something...
I don't agree with that at all.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. When you're trying to say something that's a bit sort of newsy and maybe not quite on topic...
I think that the thing with George is that with George, you know, you saw him there doing that. It will be a blink of an eye. And we're now in a... It's
because we're all getting old.
No, we are, but it goes very, very quickly. And that's what I'm trying to say. We're already on to the next... Before we know where we are, you look at those photographs of Charlotte at Wimbledon, and there was a lot of focus on it, a little bit too much considering her age. But when she's like 16, 17, she's going to be on the cover of every magazine. And we won't be thinking about Harry or Meghan. We won't at all. And I remember, you know, it shows how old I am. When William was 15 in Vancouver, I was there when he arrived with his brother who was 12, and they were on holiday and they were mobbed. It was scenes like you've never... it was like Beatlemania.
Watch the archive.
And I was there. It was unbelievable. And he freaked out completely, William, and had to go into this sort of area where Mark Bolan, the PR man, and his father had to talk him down, and he eventually came good. But he was only 3 years older than George is now.
Yeah.
So are we far away from seeing, George and Charlotte maybe going abroad with William and Catherine? Is that asking too much?
It'd be quite nice to see William and Catherine going abroad, to be honest. But I think it would be a good thing. I think an Australia visit with them, a New Zealand visit with them, I would have thought would be very much on the cards, because that sort of thing happened a lot. You know, when the Queen and Philip were younger, they went on tours. Anne and Charles in their teens went with them. So I do think that will start to happen, yes.
But I think they have this real line, don't they, in terms of education comes first, family life comes first. That's why we see William and Kate putting ahead of anything, kind of spending time with the kids during...
But I think if William was king and Catherine was queen, in a few years' time, maybe, they will definitely take the children with them, as the Queen did and Prince Philip did.
But also, you're looking at shorter tours now. I don't think there's appetite from any of them to do these kind of...
Well, there's no royal yachts.
Kind of mega, kind of 3-week extravaganzas.
Yeah. So Prince George is the future, but not quite yet. But
I think we're going to see a bit more of him.
Yeah.
I think there's been, like I said, this softly approach. And also, they realise there are certain key moments where it's only right that the children should be there. I was quite surprised that they had Louis as well out for the VE Day commemoration, sitting, watching that parade. It was quite a long time for him to be there and sort of be exposed in front of the cameras.
And they know that we're videoing it and watching it.
Yeah,
what is good also for George,
camera
this time they had the video they released as well. And so they were very aware of the
Oh yeah, for his
footage
birthday.
as well, which is something that is a definite progression, I think.
Yeah, but again, it's keeping control of how we see the children. And I get that. Look, as parents, people have their Instagram accounts, their Facebook accounts, their TikToks, whatever, and they decide what they want to share of the children. But they obviously realise there is this
Well, they've done
appetite.
it pretty well, I think, so far. I
think they're keeping us happy, aren't they? With kind of the odd little kind of public appearance and yeah, the
But as soon as Harry decides he wants to come back, you'll be there rolling out the red carpet and say, Harry, do you remember me? You know,
I would
we're
just
friends.
be interested to see what the future there looks like.
Right, just quickly, before we wrap up the show.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you're like me, but I'm already thinking about my summer holiday.
Oh, clocked out, yeah.
All right, so the King and Queen have been at Sandringham this week. Maybe their final official engagement at Sandringham Flower Show this week before they go for a very long break up to Birkhall, then Balmoral, William and Catherine. We might not see them for a while. What are we expecting from the royals this summer? What are we expecting for the King and Catherine and William to do? Do we just want them to chill out and wait for a big September? What's your thoughts?
King will be working every day.
Always does.
He'll be working with his red boxes every day. So it doesn't matter if he's in Sandringham or Balmoral, he'll be working probably till 11 o'clock at night, knowing him. But yeah, I think that the Waleses will probably go up to Balmoral for a while. I anticipate they'll probably go away. I mean, you know, they do like a family holiday, maybe. You know, we just don't get involved in that anymore. But I'm sure that the King will enjoy a long and restful time in Balmoral, but he'll be working.
He's been so busy. If anyone deserves a sun lounger and a pina colada, it's him. But I'm not sure he's that kind of man, is he?
He just isn't.
Do you know, we saw him when I think, you know, when they did that tour of the Caribbean. I was surprised because he sort of started giving himself a day off. You know, and we saw him in his swimming trunks. He doesn't wear budgie smugglers, as he said, but he was wearing his swimming trunks.
Actually,
and he looks good, doesn't he? You know,
State banquets. He's introduced a cocktail, hasn't he? So
Yes.
maybe he is a cocktails man. Maybe he is. But I think Robert is right. He is. Well, Camilla said it. He is a workaholic. There's always something. He is a man who is. He likes things to be done. He doesn't kind of sit.
Gets quite frustrated. I mean,
gets...
unfortunately, because of the treatment he's having, he's not able to walk as much as he used to. You know, let off steam with like 2-hour walks and things. He can't do that. He can't do that as much.
He drives his police officers mad. I remember it being in doing a tour in Italy. And one of the police officers had ended up traipsing up some hill, and then it started tipping it down with rain.
Yeah. But he can't do that as much.
No, exactly.
In fact, he struggles a bit. So I think that that it'll be less fun, perhaps in the mountains this time in Balmoral. You know.
Right, guys, we've just got time for our quickfire questions, and I'm going to have to ask for very short answers if you can. Right.
You're saying that pointedly at us. Can we give short answers? We'll try.
Queen Camilla chose Ovaltine and Club Biscuit flavour ice cream this week. But what ice cream would you serve to remember the royal family?
Bubblegum, Ross's from Southend.
Is that your favourite?
Blue. It's blue in colour. It leaves all their mouth coloured blue.
Great pictures.
It was my son's favourite. Bubblegum ice cream.
OK, Rhiannon?
Oh, vanilla.
Oh.
Well, you just can't go wrong, can you?
Sweet dog.
You don't want to upset them.
Very good point. What would you buy Prince George for his 12th birthday?
Tickets to the Euros final. Actually, sorry, he doesn't need a ticket, does he? But anyway.
William's going.
Yes, William is going.
I'd buy him a Chelsea season ticket.
I think that's a good idea. And finally...
So I can see some decent football.
The world champions.
Not the Villa.
And finally, name 3 royals that you would like to spend a summer holiday with.
Oh, 3. Anne, I think Anne would be brilliant because you always need someone on a holiday who gets you up and gets you going, and I think she'd do that. Camilla, I think she'd be a bit of a laugh, have a bit of a drink with her. 3rd one. You can go for a 3rd one. Who?
Do they have to be living?
No.
Oh.
The Queen Mother.
Yes.
I met the Queen Mother several times, and I remember on her birthday, I told her I was going to Saudi Arabia, and she said, "You won't like that, it's dry." And she wasn't meaning the weather. And I think
amazing.
Princess Diana and who else? Prince Philip, yeah.
OK, awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. We've gone through a lot today.
It's been busy.
Good chat.
And we've discovered that you see yourself as a working royal.
Thank you.
It's only right. It's only right.
That's all we have time for on this week's Raw Exclusive. Thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments as we do read them, and don't forget to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. We'll see you next week.